You can do one Mumbai, you may lose Balochistan.
2, 1, 0. S-139
This man is a horrible man. He must be shunned.
For this to count. Our job is to hit the target, not to count the body bags.
Hello, everybody. Hello, sir. Hello, Carl. Welcome back once again. So this time around, we're going to talk about the recent Iran-US conflict and some of the updates. It's been a bit long drawn since it originally started, right? But let's talk about what has happened in the past 48 hours, right? So on the 9th, there was a major window where you had a major wave of US strikes, about 90 targets and cumulative about 170 over 2 days on the 9th and the 10th. And then you had many of the naval assets or the port assets for the Bandar Abbas and that side, even near Chabahar as well. Like that was the particular strikes which happened. Even the IRGC small boats and some surveillance, air defense, all these things were targeted by the United States. And we saw that on the 10th, which is yesterday, as of today's recording, 10th of July 2026, we saw that Trump says that the US has agreed to Iran's request to continue talks, but and has said, "Oh, but ceasefire is over." No, no ceasefire. Absolutely no ceasefire. So, like how he would use his hand gesture, but like that, he said the ceasefire is over. And then you had fresh US sanctions, and then whatever the pre-war or pre-negotiations, they had these oil waivers given to them by the Treasury Department. So they were rescinded. That's gone. And you saw many of these mediators from Qatar travel to Iran and things like that. Many actions are there. The US has a different point of view on this as per the public statements. There is a diplomatic messaging as well on that front. Iran also has a response. The current supreme leader, Muhtaba Khamenei, who is the son of the previous supreme leader of Iran, he says that he's going to avenge his father's legacy or whatever that means. I don't know what that means, but that's what he said. And as always, they have tried to display that they don't trust the US and blah blah blah. There is so many more things, but that is just the headlines. So I think now we want to get the expert opinions of our panel here. One maybe from a little bit our point of view, and maybe Carl can talk about what people in America are talking about or thinking on this front. Like, is this like that one of those situations that it's on but it's not on, or is it on but it's not really on? Like, what's happening? Carl, please go ahead.
Well, from what I'm seeing, and most of this is going to be coming from X, as well as whatever news I can catch from Fox News. It's back and forth, like you said. It can be very confusing, and that's not good for the markets, number one, because the markets love stability. They don't like when there's chaos. And that's leading to problems with speculators and with energy prices, and that's having a great effect here on our economy. I understand the reason why we went into this when we did, and the reasons why we did it. But the problem is, I don't think that the Trump administration really factored in how long this was going to take, how long Iran was going to be able to hold out, and how they were going to be able to punish us at the gas tank. And that's really driving down public opinion right now. And that is going to put pressure on the Republicans going into the midterms. And that is what Iran knows they have to drive this. And the closer and closer we get to the midterms, and that the administration doesn't take more definitive action to end this and get those fuel prices and energy prices down, it's going to have a more and more negative effect on them. And they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place because now we're coming up on the middle of July. Midterms are in November. And if they can't get this deal sealed and get this over with within the next month or two, they're going to be in real danger of losing in the midterms. So I don't see how they're going to get around this without. I've always said this from the beginning. There's no way you can do this without putting a force on the ground. And they're going to have to figure out sooner or later how they're going to do that. Whether they're going to get a coalition of the Gulf states to come in and to go on the ground with the United States. The United States going to go on the ground and do it alone. And then they're breaking the campaign promise of saying they're not going to get into any new wars. We're not going to get into forever wars. We're not going to nation build, et cetera, et cetera. So they've kind of boxed themselves in. But obviously, I'm just, some guy on the internet with an opinion. They've got a lot more information than I do, and they may be seeing different things than I see. But right now, I think that they're going to have to make some hard decisions here within the next few weeks at the latest to decide how they're gonna go forward. Because if not, this is going to cost them very big politically, economically, and it's going to cost them a lot of gravitas on the international stage.
So, Carl, do you think that the public is ready for boots on the ground operation after such a long time in conflict? I think while that may be true, that maybe that is the required solution, but I don't think there is appetite for it at all. To the extent
No.
that they would rather be in a suffering state or scenario for decades more than have to commit to a war and forget about it, or at least do something like that.
Well, the only way they're going to be able to do that is they're going to have to change public opinion. But as you know, with other topics, you can create narratives fairly quickly. All you got to do is create a bad guy and create a situation that you can point at to where it's justifying it, saying you have to go and do this because of what this bad guy did or those bad people did or whatever. Sooner or later, they're going to have to address this. But I see domestically that they are downplaying international affairs right now. They're really trying to talk about things that are taking place within the U.S. and trying to focus on those with the narrative that they have here domestically. So I don't hold a lot of confidence that they're going to go that route. I think that they're going to look for any other way that they can go about doing this and just trying to downplaying it domestically. And for instance, I see now locally, domestically, that the administration is starting to pump up. Oh, we got all these tax credits for the middle class and no new taxes on our senior citizens and all these things that were passed in the big, beautiful bill. Look at what we did. And they're trying to rest on those laurels and talk about what they got passed and how those things are going to help. But they're looking backward, not forward, because they want to downplay what's going on in Iran locally, because domestically, I should say, because they just, I'm sure they're doing internal polling and see what plays better with the public and trying to downplay what's happening with Iran, except for the occasional rah rah, look at us, we bombed the shit out of them again. That sort of rhetoric that'll fire up the base, but doesn't really get anything done in reality.
So, sir, from the communication standpoint, right, there's two things. So, for any particular operation to succeed, they will need to have a communication strategy and then also an exit strategy. Like, first, how are they communicating to the public that they are going to get out of this? I think the question is that I don't think they have been doing a good job so far, in my opinion. But how do you look at it? Like, how do they get out of this? Like, what is your point of view?
I think the assessment by the US, I should say, the strategy, the core team, and the defense forces has not been correct in this operation. They did not. They assume that it won't take much time for Iran to, uh, get down and agree to the terms of US and handing over the dirty bombs and so kgs and all that. But what has happened is there was a point where Trump had, in my assessment and the knowledge which I get from the net, there was a point where Trump had actually decided to put boots on ground and the security infrastructure and the chief, they knew it would be a suicide, and they somehow convinced him not to go ahead. What I feel is what Trump is, they do not know, they've gone inside and they do not know the exit policy, as Carl has explained in his assessment. What I feel is Trump still will go head on and try and, you know, get its aim. The aim was to change the regime and get the dirty bomb out of Iran, whatever, percentage of, maturity it has, the uranium. I think this understanding, this peace deal or whatever you say, MOU, was just to ensure that the readiness by the US troops are in place for that final assault. Further, to give a chance to the depleted leadership of Iran that if you can come to a settlement, and also Khamenei's funeral was also pending. So it just lasted 15 days, and once Khamenei's funeral was done, Iran attacked again the U.S. bases in Bahrain and in Oman and the countries which were negotiating this MOU. I feel before, again, this important point which Carl has brought out, that before the midterm, Trump will go all out and try and prove a point that he has come out of this operation victorious. Now, how the outcome will be affecting the U.S. society, which do not accept, this casualty of the soldiers. I really, this can be on a downhill for Trump if there are casualties, and casualties will be there because Iran's terrain is such that if you get boots on ground, it is not easy to invade Iran, because you have to get to change the regime. You have to go inside Tehran, get into control of their power blocks, and then change the leadership, because initially he was trying that the people of Iran will rise up in mutiny against the leadership, which did not happen. It happened, but they were, I should say, thousands were killed on the streets and without any external help. So that is not going to come now. So the next policy is you send your troops inside and try and change the regime. So that is the only exit policy. And what I fear is once that is done, Iran will not restrain itself from firing whatever limited nukes it has in whatever maturity state. So this is going to turn ugly. That is what I can. It won't be the way he did for Venezuela. Okay, he just sent in his troops. Everything was, pre-planned and according to his expectations. It won't be so easy. So troops will go in few weeks, and there will be casualties, the quantum of casualties. That is my appreciation about this. But because he cannot exit just like that, letting Iran have more control over Hormuz and charging tariffs from any container which is passing through, any ship, merchant ship, vehicle which is passing through Hormuz. So this is not the way US will end it. US has to end it on a high. To end it on a
I
high,
think
it
I
has to
think
be.
I
So
think,
I
sir.
need Carl. Yeah.
Yes. So, Carl, I think that in this case, Trump is that actor, famous actor in the horror movie, where he says that just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly, right. So I want you to bookmark this now. I want you to save this, and then after the midterms, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this again. Okay. So predictions. I predict after the midterms. The colonel says before the midterms. So we'll see which way it goes. I don't think that they're going to do it. And to allude back to what you were talking about, sir, you got to understand Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, as he calls himself now. He's from not from my chronological generation, but from my generation of service. Having served in a global war on terrorism, and he has a very long history of advocacy long before he even started at Fox News, and it continued while he was a host at Fox News. And he's continued with the same message once he's become the Secretary of Defense /War. And that is, he's not in favor of any more forever wars. And he's against putting boots on ground. And so, as you said, President Trump probably was like, rah, 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 let's go in there and kick the shit out of him. And Pete Hegseth put the brakes on it. And then also, too, you have his VP, J.D. Vance, who served as an enlisted man Now, granted, he was just a combat journalist, but he still deployed and he still went to Iraq. And I believe he may have even spent time in Afghanistan. I'm not sure about that. I don't want to give you false information. But he's also from that same generation and that same mindset that right now you have these guys entering into middle age, and they are amongst the biggest voter bloc, and they will just have an outroar if we do that. But other than those veterans, which while we are a loud group, we're a small group. And if you can get enough of a unified message out there and rally the troops per se, not the actual troops, but the American people and especially the Republican base, and you whip them up into a war frenzy, then they will support it. But right now, with the economy being the way it is, and going back to Bill Clinton's famous saying, "It's the economy, stupid." When it comes time for an election year, those kitchen table subjects matter the most. Domestic issues matter the most, and especially the economy. People vote with their pocketbook, and I just don't think they're going to take the risk of committing before the midterms. But we'll see if I'm wrong. It won't be the first time. It won't be the last.
Absolutely, and I think.
But I think Carl agrees on this fact that Trump would like to put boots on ground. Maybe before, maybe after.
I say that as somebody who has spent time on the ground. Nobody wants to do it, but that's where the dichotomy comes in, because you have to have a clear mission up front, and you have to have the willingness to accomplish that mission. And to be quite honest, the United States has not done that since the end of World War II, due to political and economic reasons. So let's see if finally, we get a set of cojones and we'll actually go and finish the job this time.
I think, Carl, the
Because
question
there's
is
no way
that
coming out of it. There's no way coming out of this.
I mean, Carl, but if you think about it, right? Like, if 9/11 could not actually give the US a clear mission on what they have to do, like they jumped into invading Afghanistan, Iraq, and all these other different places, but they did not have a clear exit plan. So, do you think that even Iranian campaign would have a clear exit plan, or would they go back to being somebody who's trying to do the nation building when they cannot?
Well, that's going to really depend on how much they support the Iranian people and how much they're willing to stand up and fight against the regime themselves. And, we have the history back, the Green Revolution, back when Obama was in, and when the Iranian people, stood up then. That, in my opinion, was time to act. And we hesitated. Now you see where it got us. We got us to where we are today. And now we're hesitating again. So there's going to have to be some sort of force on the ground who is going to engage in what we said we wouldn't do, which is regime change. And then if you break it, you have to fix it. You own it. So if we go in there and we topple their government and we destroy their economy, we, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, are legally bound to provide support for that country until such time as they can again take care of themselves. So by definition, we will get stuck in regime change and nation building, whether you like it or not. And whoever convinced Trump that we could do this very quickly, very easily, it echoes back to Rumsfeld when we went into Iraq, and he said, "Oh, they're going to greet us in Baghdad with flowers." Yeah, they did. But winning the war is the easy part. It's winning the peace that is always the challenge.
Yes.
I think the other part also is that, like, the US cannot be afford to be seen as an invasion force once again. They would much rather be seen as a liberator force. So in this case, if this is the ideal scenario, then the majority of troops must actually be contributed by all the neighbors that actually Iran has attacked. Like, maybe it's Saudi, or maybe it will be our dear neighbors in Pakistan, or whether it will be somebody else, like somebody who is going to be a proxy force, essentially, for the US, where they can fight.
Actually,
on the
in this operation, Trump doesn't have any friends. The NATO forces are not willing to go in.
Yes.
Right.
And here's where you're going to have that challenge.
Yes.
I fully believe that we're going to have to, ally with the Gulf states. However, you're going to run into the problem now of you're going to have the issue of the Sunni versus the Shia, and that's going to really cause a lot of people to maybe put it this way. So you may have the Iranian people who would stand up and support the U.S. coming in and go against their own regime, but all of a sudden, if you start sending Saudis in and you've got Shia versus Sunni, that's going to change the equation 100%, because those same people who want to be liberated, they want to be liberated, but they don't want to be seen that they're being conquered or colonized by Sunnis if they're Shia. So that's
Yes.
going to be a problem.
It has to be U.S. forces or Israeli defense forces, and they have to come out as a winner in some way, as a face saver.
And one interesting thing, Carl, is that many of the Iranian oil fields are actually located in areas where Sunnis are in majority, not Shias. So it is the other way around. Like Iran may be a majority Shia country, but actually all the resources that they are controlling or are interested in are in areas dominated by Sunnis. So the question is that if somehow they are able to convince this segment of society that okay, this is not going to work, and oh, this government is going to collapse, then like these are the different kind of regime change operations that could be executed just on the basis of demography. This is what I've seen on recent maps that they were talking about. So different ways to think about it.
Yeah, we face that same. I personally face that same challenge in Iraq. We had the same thing going on between the Shia and the Sunni. I was in Ramadi, and we had the Sunni that we were working with. But then, if you went over to the other part of the country and you were dealing with the people over in Baghdad, they were dealing with the Shia who were fighting against them. So we were able. Unfortunately, the people who attacked us on 9/11 got us into the global war on terrorism were more rooted in the Wahhabism and the Sunni uh, background. But in the end, the people that we ended up being able to align with better, ironically, was the Sunni against the Shia. But that's going to become a factor one way or the other if we go into Iran. That's going to be something that's going to inflame the domestic population there and could cause more resistance and more fighting than less.
So I think long-term strategy, remains to be seen. So let's restate our predictions, and then on a closing statement, we will sign off.
Okay, well, I'll go first on that one then. Like I said, I don't think they're going to take any large scale invasion of Iran uh, at all. And I don't think that if they do take any action, it'll be after the midterms. And I think it'll be more in terms of raids and taking and holding ground in strategic places, but not an outright big, huge invasion like we saw going into Iraq. That's going to be the middle ground they're going to have to find. While I think that it would be good to get the Gulf states involved, I think they're going to just contribute through intelligence and financially. I don't think they're going to put boots on the ground, although I think that they should because it's their neck of the woods and they're the ones with skin in the game. Um, but I think that this is going to result in. I'm not rooting for this. I want people to understand that because when they watch it, they're going to, oh, he's rooting for the other people. He's rooting against the United States. That's not true at all. I want to see the United States do well. I want to see them come out of this achieving their goals. But I think that this is going to turn into a long-term problem that's going to be around for a while. And I think this is going to cause the GOP to lose the midterms.
Okay. And sir, now your prediction.
I have predicted earlier that it will be a pre-midterm operation just as a face saver for Trump. And obviously, it won't be a full scale invasion as in Iraq. It will be specific operations, raids, specific important vital assets, and the government infrastructure just to do the regime change. Nothing against the common civilians. That is what, because they want the support of the civilians. So it will be intelligence-based specific operations, and basically to IRG and the control and the government control. The aim will be to somehow hand over the regime to a pro-US leader and move out. But in my opinion, that won't be so easy. It will be quite a nuisance, and none of the Sunni, say Saudi or UAE, will send any of their troops. First of all, they don't have their own troops. They rely on Pakistan and other countries to support the troops, and Pakistan and such missionary troops will not like to interfere with Iran and take a one-to-one, enmity and get
Because
a
they have actual physical border with Iran. So
and they're afraid of Iran's actions, right, with this operation. So they will support US from behind financially with whatever they can with their intelligence. But yes, this is a war of US and Israel face on with Iran, and they have to find a solution. Israel will not lie down without a closure of this, so it will be murky. That is my last take on that.
Okay, and
Okay,
so I
so
got to say this. This
yeah,
is what we got to do. Okay, Parth, you're going to be the referee, and you're the one who's going to take care of the paperwork for this deal. Okay, here's what's going to happen, right? So if I'm right, then the good colonel here is going to have to send me a case of Indian mangoes, and you're going to have to handle the paperwork to get them imported here. Okay, and if he's right, I'm going to send him a $100 gift card to Starbucks so he can get himself some coffee and rent himself a Harley Davidson, and somebody can take a picture of him riding his Harley Davidson holding his Starbucks.
sure, sure.
done.
I'm
Sure, why
liking
not?
this
Why not?
game. And what
Why
is
not?
Path going to get? He should enjoy both the cases, right?
No,
As a
and
He
you're
mediator.
going
gets
to
the
get all.
pleasure. He gets the pleasure of our company.
Yeah, and I get to enjoy all the views that come from this engagement. So
Okay, that's good to end on this episode and with this. So we how many months we've got to decide who's the winner?
November is the midterms.
So around
There we go.
August, 3 months.
We'll say November. That fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Fair. Why not?
Okay.
Okay. All right. I know. Thank you all. This was wonderful. We can do it once again. So
Yeah.
thanks for being here, and Jai Hind.
As always, thanks for having us.